Welcome back to Finnish Made Easier. Today we brought a very important subject, which is plural partitive. So this is really important because if you've seen my video on when to use partitive, that only covered when we use singular partitive for my examples, but all of those same rules, like negatives, abstract things after those partitive verbs, if any of those times our object is plural, we have to use actually a different formation. What I talked about in those videos was singular partitive, but using those same list of rules like negatives and more like abstract, incomplete thoughts, whenever we're dealing with a plural there, we're going to have to use this different formation. That's very interesting. So for example, if I wanted to say like, oh, I don't want any books. Since it's a negative and books is plural, we can't just say kirja, which is the singular partitive. We have to say kirjoja. And I'm going to talk about how to form that plural partitive in this video. So be very useful. I do want to add in the caveat too, that when I talk about when to use partitive, whenever it's plural, you can use this formation instead, except for after numbers. I talked about how after numbers you use partitive. You're not going to use plural partitive after numbers ever. So always make sure that one's always going to be singular partitive. But for all the rest, when you have a plural, you can use plural partitive instead. So yeah, obviously it's used quite a bit if that's the case. So I want to talk about how to form it. I do want to say right now also, we're going to be using plural stems and singular stems quite a lot in this video. So if you haven't watched my videos on how to form a singular stem or how to form a plural stem with nouns and adjectives, I would highly recommend watching those videos before watching this. It'll make this video make a lot more sense. But that being said, if you do know how to form singular stems and plural stems, or you're just curious how this works, let's get right into it. So we're going to be with plural partitive. To form plural partitive, we'll always be adding something onto the plural stem of a word. So you can see with all my examples here, I got it all the way to the plural stem. So I have like the word, the singular stem, and the plural stem. The reason I do that is because we're going to always be adding to the plural stem. And there's two options of what we can add. We can either add an A or we can add a TA. So it's kind of nice. We only have two options. We just have to figure out which option it is. So the process we do to form plural partitive is we're going to find the plural stem, which is already a few steps, singular stem, plural stem. Then we're going to add either an A or a TA to that plural stem. So it can take a few steps, but when we break it down like this, it's actually really kind of easy to understand why it happens. Sometimes it can be hard to think about on the spot, so it's good to get used to them. But when we break it down like this and watch the process, it should actually make a lot of sense why the words are doing what they do. And one thing I will note, some people might be thinking who know a little bit, wait, don't some plural partitive things end in JA, not just A or TA? And yes, there's one thing that we're going to do too. Whenever we add an A, sometimes we're going to be left with a vowel IA. So for example, if right here I added an A with sonoe, we have this OI, that would give us OIA. Every time we're left with a vowel IA, we're just going to change that I to a J. And that's just kind of, they sound very similar anyway, so just know you do that. For example, if I added an A onto here, it'd be sanoia, which is kind of like sanoya anyway with a J. Sanoya, sanoya. They sound very similar. So just every time we have vowel IA, we're going to change it into vowel JA. And that'll make all of our rules much more simple. So again, we'll see examples of that in a minute. But let's just get right into it. The very first easy rule to know is just if we get to our plural stem, and our plural stem is just a consonant I, so I put C here for consonant. Every time it's a consonant I, so our plural stem isn't ending in two vowels. Every time that's the case, we can add just A to our plural stem. So, for instance, koira is our word means dog. The stem would be koira, and the plural stem is koiri. Since this plural stem just ends in a single vowel, there's not two vowels at the end, we can just add an A to it. So we get koiria. So koiria is the plural partitive of dog. Another example would be kysymys, which is question. The stem of kysymys is kysymykse, and the plural stem of it is kysymyksi. And so again, since we just have the single vowel at the end, so it's a consonant and then a vowel, there's just one vowel, not two at the end. Really easy. We always know that we just add an A, so we get kysymyksiä. And we have to do the A with the dots because of vowel harmony. I've got a video on that if you're not sure why that is. But yes, kysymyksiä. So again, that one's really easy. If it just ends in a single vowel, which is always going to be an I on the plural stem. So if it ends in just a single I with a consonant before it, then we're just going to add an A. If that is not the case, if our plural stem ends in any of these, or just any double vowel, then we're going to have to look at the singular stem. So again, this first one, we're just looking straight at the plural stem. Does it end in a single I with no vowel before it? If not, all the rest of these, we're going to have to look back at the singular stem to know what to do. So again, it's very important. I'm going to reiterate it a few times. We're going to be looking at the singular stem for what to do, but we're always going to add our ending onto the plural stem. We're always adding A or TA onto the plural stem, even though we're going to look at the singular stem. So this next one that's pretty simple is whenever we see that our singular stem is just two syllables and it ends in a consonant vowel. So again, if our plural stem didn't end in a single vowel, but our singular stem does, and our singular stem is just two syllables, then we're also just going to add A. Add A to our plural stem. So like laulu, our plural stem is laului, which is not in this rule. We have vowel I at the end here. But we can see that our singular stem is two syllables, laulu, which means song, by the way. And our singular stem does end in just a single vowel. So we can just add A onto the end of this one. So we get laului, that's our plural stem. We add A, we get lauluja. But again, now we're left with this vowel IA, which is where this comes in. Since we have vowel IA, we're just going to change that I to a J. They look very similar. You could just add a little swoop onto there. So we get lauluja. Lauluja is song in plural partitive. Again, we just added an A onto there, and we just changed that I to a J since we had the three vowels in a row. Or this next one, sana. The singular stem is sana, plural stem is sanoi. We can see that it doesn't end in just a single I, it ends in OI, so it's not a consonant I. But its singular stem does end in a single vowel and is two syllables. So again, we can just add A onto the plural stem. So that's our plural stem. We add A, but we have three vowels here, vowel IA. So we change it to vowel JA, sanoja. Sanoja is going to be our plural partitive form of sana. After that, the other easy rule is if our singular stem does end in a vowel, no matter what, we're going to be adding a TA to our plural stem. So again, we can see, and all of these are our plural stem, right there and right there, is not a consonant I. We look to our singular stem and it's a vowel. Ma, tärkeä. So what we're going to do is add TA to this plural stem. So we have ma, its singular stem is ma, its plural stem is mai. We can see that it does have two vowels in the singular stem, so we can add TA to the plural stem, which gives us maita. Maita, just mai with the TA at the end. Same thing with tärkeä. Tärkeä, stem is tärkeä, plural stem is tärkeä. It doesn't end in a consonant I. Its singular stem is vowel, so we can add TA onto here. We get tärkeitä. And when we're adding the TA, we never have to worry about this rule. We're never going to be left with the three vowels in a row because we're adding a consonant as we add it. So that one's kind of nice, but maita. and tärkeitä. So after we've gone through these 3 rules, the only things we're going to be left with are words that do end in vowel with their plural stem, and then words whose singular stem ends in consonant vowel that is more than 2 syllables. So we're only going to be left with longer words. So whenever you have a short word, it should end in one of these. After that, we just have our longer words. And so some of our simpler, longer words to form plural partitive are going to be our ones that end in NTO, NTA, or STO. So again, after this rule, they're all going to be the longer words more than 2 syllables, and they should all have a consonant vowel here in the singular stem. But like, for example, NTO, NTA, and STO, if our singular stem ends in any of those, we're going to add A to the plural stem. So like kirjasto, its stem is kirjasto, plural stem is kirjastoi. And we see that it doesn't quite fit into any of these. Its plural stem isn't just a consonant I, its singular stem isn't 2 syllables, and its singular stem isn't vowel at the end. So it's going to be, but we're still going to add A at the end. So we're going to do kirjastoi, and then add the A. Again, we have vowel I-A. So we can go kirjastoja. Same thing with hieronta. Also, kirjasto is like a library. Hieronta is like a massage. So hieronta, stem is hieronta, plural stem is hierontoi. Fits into the same rule. The singular stem ends in NTA. This one ends in STO. So again, we can just add an A onto there. Hierontoi. Add the A. Change that I to a J. Hierontoja. So yes, you might notice like number 4 is very similar to number 2, but when our singular stem ends in a consonant vowel, it's not always going to add an A if it's more than 2 syllables, so that's why they're separate. For example, if our singular stem ends in LA, NA, RA, or IJA, we're actually going to add TA onto the plural stem. Add TA to plural stem. So like peruna, which is potato, its singular stem is peruna, its plural stem is perunoi, and so now we add TA. Perunoita. And again, it's because it doesn't fit any of these, it's more than 2 syllables, singular stem and plural stem don't fit these, and its singular stem ends in an NA. So this is for LA, NA, RA, and IJA. We're going to add TA onto the plural stem. So perunoita. This last one, tekia, its stem is tekia, and its plural stem is tekiae. See, plural stem doesn't end in a single I. It's more than 2 syllables. Singular stem ends in an IJA. It's not just vowel, it's IJA. So we're going to follow this rule, which is, again, add TA. So we can take tekiae and go tekiaita. So, as you're probably feeling right now, that's a lot of things to be keeping track of. So a big thing with this is just practice, practice, practice. And hopefully these patterns will start to make a lot more sense. Again, you can take some pretty easy shortcuts. Is whenever you see that the plural stem ends in just a single I with a consonant before it, you can always just add A. Very easy. And you know, if it's not that, if it's 2 syllables and ends in consonant vowel, you can just add A. If it ends in 2 vowels, you're going to add TA. Then after that, we'll just be looking at the endings of the singular stem if it didn't fit into any of those. There are still a few left that are going to be really interesting. So make sure you've got these rules down. I say these rules are the most important to understand. Then I'm going to switch around the board and talk about 2 more really interesting types of words when forming plural partitive. All right, I've switched up the board and got our last 2 rules here. And just like before with the last two rules, if you've made it to this point with looking through the rules with the words, our words should have a plural stem that ends in 2 vowels, and our singular stem should be more than 3 syllables. And then we're just looking at the ending of that 3-syllable singular stem, and it should also be a consonant vowel at the end, not 2 vowels. And that should just be kind of canceled out by if you went through the other rules already. So I talked about some of the endings of this singular stem already in the other ones, and you might be thinking, oh, there's only A and TA, so how does this get split up more? Well, the interesting thing with the rest of the words is we can really add A or TA, which is actually kind of nice if you forget which one to add, that either one is technically correct. But the reason I've still split it up into 2 rules is because they tend to have one that's more common. So with any of these last endings, if I haven't talked about the ending already in the video, it's probably fine to usually add an A or a TA, though it does vary on words. There's some specific words where only one is correct. But for the most part, if it ends in any of these, you can add an A or a TA. But I wanted to just mention real quick which one is usually more common based off of the ending. So if it ends in a vowel consonant I, which is quite a lot, an LLI or LU, then it's more common to add an A to the plural stem. I'm going to write here or TA, meaning that it's correct to add TA as well. That's a valid form, but probably A is more common. So yeah, this is ones where we have like a double vowel before a consonant I. So vowel consonant I, which is actually a strangely common type of word, especially in borrowed words. Things like banani, where we have vowel consonant I. Our stem is banani, plural stem is banane. And so again, probably more common to add A. Now, if you remember the rule, this is probably the better one to do. Banane, and then add an A. Follow the same thing, the I changes to a J. So we get bananea. But I'm going to put in parentheses here, it's not incorrect to say bananeta. Bananeta. It's also correct. Bananea is probably more common, but bananeta is also correct. Another example, like this LU, again, this could be vowel consonant I, LLI, or LU. Like keskustelu, the singular stem is keskustelu, plural stem is keskustelui. So we can have keskustelui and then add an A. Since we've got the 3 vowels, we have to change this I to a J. Keskusteluja is the probably more common way to say it, but also isn't wrong if you say keskusteluita. I've heard both of them before, they're both correct. Again, with these kind of words, the A is probably more common, but either way is fine in certain circumstances. So keskusteluja or keskusteluita. And for the rest, we're gonna have the opposite. So this is gonna be like our just single vowel CI, or LO, RO, MO, KKA, or KKO. And KKA and KKO are gonna be really interesting. I'll talk about them in just a second, but let's just talk about these other endings first. But yes, these ones we're gonna be most of the time adding TA to our plural stem, but it would also be correct to add A. TA is just, in my experience, more common. So like sipuli, which is onion, singular stem sipuli, plural stem sipule. Probably the most common way to do it is sipuleita, or sipuleita. I don't know, I keep saying and instead of a today. Sipuli, sipuli, sipule, sipuleita. And that's probably the best way to say it, but also not incorrect to say sipuleja. So again, I just added an A on there and changed the I to a J, so we can get sipuleita or sipuleja. Or this one, numero, this is the RO. Oh, I forgot to mention sipuli, this is the vowel consonant I on here, vowel consonant I, not double vowel consonant I. So like banani's double vowel consonant I, this one's just single vowel consonant I. And these ones tend to have A, these ones tend to have TA, but they can both be either one. This one is like an example of our RO, numero, singular stem numero, plural stem numeroi. The most common one I hear is numeroita with the TA, but I've also heard numeroja. And I'm using that J again. I just added an A onto there, changed the I to a J, so we get numeroja. But numeroita, in my experience, is more common. Okay, then mansikka and muusikko, so our KKA and KKO. These are really special when forming plural partitive. They're going to work the same way, where they are usually TA, but can also be an A. But the reason these are so interesting is because if you add a TA, you're actually going to soften the KK. But if you add an A, you're not going to. So in no other formation of plural partitive do we use softening or kopete at all. If you don't know what those are, by the way, I do have a video on what softening and kopete is, so this would make more sense, but we don't use it at all in plural partitive except for KKA and KKO. And we only use it if we're doing TA. So for example, mansikka goes to mansikka as its singular stem, mansikkoi as its plural stem. If we're adding TA, this KK is going to go to a singular K. So we get mansikoita. Mansikoita with a single K. But if we wanted to add an A instead of a TA, we get mansikoja. Mansikoja. With this still having the double K, and again, always that I changes to a J. So we're going to have mansikoita or mansikoja. It's really interesting. With the KK, it will soften with a TA, and it won't soften with just adding an A. So that's kind of just a random case. It's honestly not used very often, but it's kind of useful to know if you're really curious why this is happening. This last one, muusikko, is going to work basically the same way. This is like a musician. So if I want to say musicians, quite often I see it with the TA, muusi, and again that K is going to soften, muusikoita, muusikoita. But if I want, I can add an A instead, muusi, but I don't soften the K if that's the case. Muusikkoja. And either of these are perfectly valid. Muusikoita or muusikkoja. Mansikoita, mansikkoja. Both perfectly valid. I tend to see the TA more often, but either one is perfectly fine. So, yeah, that's all. And remember, don't ever use kopete or softening when forming plural partitive except for these KKA or KKO ones. You never do it except for with these. But yes, that was all the rules. If you would like more examples or just another explanation of it, I've got a super helpful document in the video description that has just a ton of examples for each type of word and just kind of another explanation of how this works. So it's super nice for review. For this last part, I'm going to switch up the board one more time, and we're just going to go through some examples of what sentences with plural partitive look like. And I'll show kind of how to use plural partitive in a sentence. So I'm going to switch up the board one more time, and we can get right into that. All right, I've switched up the board again, and now we've got some example sentences here. So this is going to make the most sense if you've seen my video on when to use partitive. We're going to use a lot of those same rules. It's just if it has a plural object now, we're going to use plural partitive instead of singular partitive, which is kind of the examples I gave in those videos. That's with the exception of after numbers, we're always going to use singular partitive. Don't ever put plural partitive after just a normal number. That's always going to be singular partitive. Even though the word looks plural, that one can be a little bit confusing. We're always going to use singular partitive after numbers. But for the rest of the rules, like negative sentences or continuous processes, things like that, if our object is plural, we're going to use plural partitive instead of singular partitive, which we just learned how to form. So that's great. So let's do some examples. I've got the English sentence here and all of the Finnish, except for our word that goes into plural partitive, I have underlined, and it's just in its normal form, so we're going to have to change it to be in partitive. So this first one, I don't want gifts. This one is going to be in partitive because it's a negative sentence, and you remember that with negative sentences, if there's not any other case on the word, like a locative case, if our object is in a negative sentence and it doesn't have any other case on it, we're going to put it into partitive. And since it's gifts, not just gift, we're going to use plural partitive. If it said, I don't want a gift, we'd probably use singular. But since I don't want gifts, we're going to use plural partitive. So en halua, so then we have lahja. So we can kind of use our rules from before. So lahja, its singular stem is lahja, and its plural stem is lahjoi. So I'm going to just write an arrow right there. We're going to want to be adding something to lahjoi. That's its plural stem. And again, I have a video on plural stems if you still don't know how to form these. But lahjoi is going to be our plural stem. I'm going to add something onto that. We can see that this is 2 vowels at the end, so we can't just know we add a immediately. But if we look at this one, it is 2 syllables with the ending being consonant vowel. So we actually do still add a. So we get lahjoi. I'm going to add an a. Then we have oia, so we're going to change that to oja. So lahjoja. So you can say en halua lahjoja. That's nice. This next one, we are reading books. This one's going to be partitive because it's a continuous process. It's not complete yet. And since we're currently reading the books, we're going to use partitive. And since it's books plural, we have to put it in plural partitive to show that we're talking about multiple books, not we are reading a book, but we're reading books. So luemme, this one's going to be really similar to lahja. Kirja, the stem is also just kirja. Our plural stem is kirjoi. And just like lahja, it's going to follow the same exact rule. That's vowel, vowel, but this one's 2 syllables and consonant vowel, so we're also going to add a. So we add an a, oia, kirjoja. These ones are obviously very similar words. Lahja and kirja sound similar, and they work very similar. Lahjoja, kirjoja. So if you want to say we are reading books, we can say luemme kirjoja. This next one, I love dogs. Remember that rakastaa, or to love, is one of our words that forces partitive, makes the next word into partitive. But since dogs is plural, it's going to make the next word into plural partitive. So we got to put koira into plural partitive. The stem of koira is koira, and then its plural stem is koiri. This one is the easiest one to turn into plural partitive because we can just see that it ends in a single vowel, not 2 vowels, and whenever the plural stem ends in just a single vowel, we can always just add in a. So we can say rakastan koiria. That one's pretty good. I love dogs, rakastan koiria. This next one, a lot of people. This kind of goes into indefinite. We talked about indefinite in our video about partitive, but if we have something that is kind of individual, but there's still a lot of it, sometimes we're going to use plural partitive, and that's most often showed by this word polyon. Polyon means a lot, and usually when we have a word following polyon, we're going to put it into plural partitive. So that's why I figured I'd bring it up. Polyon is a really good indicator that we're going to use plural partitive. So a lot of people, polyon, ihminen, we got to put that into plural partitive. So we get ihmise is the stem, and then the plural stem, we're going to replace that e with an I to get ihmisi. And it's just like koira. This plural stem ends in just a single vowel instead of 2 vowels, which is always what we like because then we can just add an a. So we can get polyon ihmisia. It's like a lot of people. And again, polyon is usually going to make the next thing in plural partitive. It's kind of like an indefinite amount. It's just like a lot. and there's multiple people, so there's multiple individual people, so it's still going to be plural rather than like if we talked about indefinite, it could be like water, or there's not like a lot of individual water, there's just some water, so it's going to be singular partitive. But when it's like a lot of people, like after polyon, it's going to be more often in plural partitive. This next one, I'm waiting for miracles. Again, if it was waiting for a miracle, then it would be just singular partitive, but since it's miracles, plural, we're going to use plural partitive. And the reason we're using partitive is because it's both a continuous process and to wait usually forces partitive. So it makes the word after it going to be in partitive. So odotan is I wait or I'm waiting, and then ihme is miracle. So let's put that into plural partitive. So we're going to get the stem of ihme is ihme. And keep in mind that this is the singular stem and it has two vowels. But when we find the plural stem, we get ei. And so we see that since the plural stem has two vowels, we have to look back at the singular stem. And whenever the singular stem had two vowels, like this one did, we know we're going to add ta. So ihmeitä. Odotan ihmeitä. And this last one, I don't eat carrots. We have en syö, which is I don't eat. And again, this one's going to be plural partitive because it's negative. And carrots is plural, so we're using the plural partitive. En syö porkkana is our word for carrot. Porkkana is the stem for porkkana. Our plural stem is going to be porkkanoi. So we got this vowel at the end here, so we can't just add a. I have to look back at here. We don't have two vowels in the stem. And our ending is na. You might remember that na was one of our ones where we just add ta. Ta. So we get porkkanoita. So en syö porkkanoita is how we say I don't eat carrots. So hopefully that makes sense kind of how we're going to use plural partitive in a sentence and how to form it. Again, I know forming it can be kind of complicated. We're hopping from step to step to step, but I hope breaking it down in this way can help you at least kind of understand that there is some sense to it. And if you are curious about a word, hopefully you can work through it in your brain and kind of train your brain what kind of words do which kind of thing. And again, I just want to say, I have that document in the description that will have tons of examples, and it's really nice to look over if you're interested in that. And again, I have videos on things like these plural stems and singular stems if you're a little bit rusty on those and you need help with those before how to use it. I will also say there is one more use of when to use plural partitive and partitive. I'm going to have a video coming out soon that has to do with adjectives, so look out for that as well. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you still have questions, make sure to leave them in the comments, and we'll see you in the next video. Heippa!